Right, good morning everyone. Nice to see so many people here today. I'm Andy Cook, G4PIQ, but it's not me that you're here to see. It's my delight and pleasure to compare, is that the right word, the session with the RSGB Board this morning. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Stuart.
So I'm Stuart, G3YSX, the RSGB Board Chair, and the agenda for today is an introduction to the board. So I'm going to ask each of the board members to say who they are and perhaps what they do. And then we're going to have a short post-AGM update to bring you up to date with where we are in terms of deliveries. We're going to have a short piece from Mark Jones here on the RSGB strategy and what we've been doing in that regard. And then we're going to split Q&A into two pieces if we can. First off, questions about the strategy, and then general open mic questions. So could I ask the board to introduce themselves? So starting with Tony and go across. Microphone.
Good morning, it's Tony Miles, and I'm Board Director, as you've heard, and I'm also RR1, so I look after a chunk of Scotland on the west side. Thank you very much. Our call sign, by the way, is MM0GMZ.
Thanks, Tony. Hi everyone, I'm Mark. My call sign is G0MGX. I joined the board at the last AGM. I look after a couple of special interest groups, Intruder Watch, and I've also taken on the RSGB strategy ownership.
I'm Stephen Purser, GW4SHF. I am the company secretary and I'm also the elections officer.
Hello, I'm Len Padgett, GM0NX. My kind of board responsibilities at the moment are exams, planning advisory committee and OAS.
And I'm John McCulloch, GI4BWM, RSGB President.
Peter Bowyer, G4MJS, recently joined the board, and I am board liaison for contests and trophies.
I'm Chris Wood, GD6TWF. I'm the honorary treasurer. I'm not actually a board member. I'm just a board appointee to advise them on sort of financial matters.
Hi, I'm Nathan, 2 Mike 0 Oscar Charlie, and I look after the Beyond Exams awards and the SIG group area, and I'm also part of the regional team in Region 1.
Okay, so let's go through where we are. So I needed to set a baseline. So the baseline I've set is the information we reported at the AGM, which took us to the end of last year, the beginning of this year. So if anyone wants to catch up on that, then go look at the March RADCOM, a year in numbers, an excellent sort of set of statistics for a baseline, and also the committee reports, which were in April 2024. And you can watch the AGM itself, which is still available, which is available on YouTube. So, and I'm going to assume that everyone is familiar with that point in history, that epoch. So, membership of all types sits at 20,555. It's a number I remember from somewhere. But it's fluctuated over the year between 20,500 and 20,700, and there are some graphs. Notice that the baseline is really sort of on the floor somewhere, and so I would say my physics do statistics by eyes says it's about stable at the number we've got now, and it's been stable like that for a long time, and that is actually pretty good compared to other societies as far as we can see, other societies of all sorts. So finance, we've got cash and investments of 1.1 million. We are still making a loss. The loss was 70,000 up to July, against a budgeted loss of 125,000. So we're doing better than expected. The projected loss for the whole year is 125k, but before investment income, and that is a conservative number because there was money that we had expected to spend that we are unlikely to spend. Chris can give you more information if you have questions. The root cause of the loss was the big macroeconomic things that happened. COVID masked a lot of travel, and then there were huge financial shocks when the war happened. And we are affected just like everyone else. It's not like consumer inflation. It's inflation on the things we spend money on, and there's a lot of energy in what we do. The recovery delay occurs because when we increase fees, subs, it takes 2 years before we get all the money through. That's because someone may have renewed yesterday before we do it, and then if they pay monthly, we don't get the money in until the end of the year. So we're dealing with a 2-year financial lag in terms of membership subs. We're moving in the right direction. We've got a little way to go, and we're about to start the budget process for next year. Exams. The syllabus 1.6a has been released to take into account the new license terms, and the books are now published. From the beginning of next year, we will not be doing paper exams except in special educational needs. And again, Len can talk some more about that if you have questions. Exam stats look pretty healthy this year. Last year, 1742 exams from January to September. This year, 2,360. And we really need to thank the guys who've been doing the invigilation because that's a lot of work that they have done there. So it's a 36% increase compared to the last year. The bulk of the increase was in foundation, of course, intermediate 370 and 200 just shy of 250 to full, including direct to full. So strategy. Strategy has been front and centre of everything we have been doing since the last AGM. We heard the lessons, we have taken them to heart, and we are delivering on them. We have a monthly item on strategy in every board meeting. Every month we have been publishing an article on a strategy-related topic showing what we have been doing. It was a core item in a joint staff board meeting in May, and it was at the core of the senior leadership. That's a subset of the volunteer leadership team. It was a core item in that, working a set of problems that Mark will be talking about. So strategy is the focus of the rest of this session here, and I think I hand over to Mark at that point.
Thanks, Stuart. Can anybody hear me? Hello, hello. Aha, excellent. Thank you, Stuart. So for those of you that don't know me, so I joined the board at the last AGM, but I was on the board prior to that around 2017, 2018 time. My personal circumstances have changed quite a lot, so I've got a lot more time to give to a voluntary role now. And when I joined the board, I've done nothing but annoy everybody by saying strategy, strategy, strategy. That's all we need to think about, we need to focus on, we need to worry about, and we need to think about all of these things. And not only am I thinking about the sort of stuff I'm going to present to you today, which is really about day-to-day things that we're doing at the moment, I think we're also trying very hard to think about what the RSGB needs to look like in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time. So we're not just talking about immediate things, we're talking about a longer-term view as well. We're trying to take a longer-term view as well. So we're currently focused on 4 strategic priorities, which if hopefully you've been seeing the articles we've been publishing in Radcom on the topic of strategy. So we're focused on growth of amateur radio, the membership numbers of the RSGB, our spectrum and licensing, and looking at the financial stability of the society, not forgetting the other 5 topics that we have listed on the slide here, but the 4 priorities that we've got the focus on at the moment are the top 4. And I want to say briefly a bit about membership of the RSGB, because one of the questions we get asked over and over again is what percentage of licensed amateurs are members of the Radio Society of Great Britain. Now that is a very easy question to answer. What's a much more difficult question to answer is what percentage of active amateur radio license holders are members of the RSGB, because we know that there are a lot of people who perhaps hold an amateur radio license who are not considered to be an active radio amateur. So we're doing a bit of work, or quite a lot of work in the background, to try and answer that question, which is not an easy question to answer. But let me give you an example of the kind of things we're thinking about. So we could get, for example, a list of UK call signs from some source like Supercheck Partial, for example, and then we could look at what subset of those call signs are members of the RSGB to give us a view of contesting percentages within our ranks. We could also do the same with PSK Reporter of CW spots, for example. So there's lots of things that we're thinking about how we can try and get a better handle on the number of active licenses in the UK, which is always a question that we get asked. So there's work ongoing in that area, and it's a difficult topic because there's lots of things like GDPR that we need to be very careful about, how we use data and how we consider the use of data and other people's information. But we are trying to answer some of those questions in the background. So when we focus on growth, our aim that we've documented is to grow amateur radio in the UK in the year of 2024 and in 2025, and that would be demonstrated by an increase in exams taken through raised levels of participation through each audience segment. That's the way that we've documented growth. And to kick the growth aspect of our strategy off, we held a workshop back in, let me get a date, February, sorry, how time flies when you're having fun. So back in February, we held a growth workshop where we got a lot of clever people together, put a lot of heads together, got a lot of thinking caps out, and came up with 7 work streams that we've now created. Each of the 7 work streams is championed by an individual board member, and I annoy that board member on a monthly basis at the board meetings to tell me how they're getting on, what they're doing, what they're up to. So practical outreach is the first group, skills and career development, getting started. Now, somebody wrote to me recently under the misinterpretation that getting started was meant to be a simpler, less technical route into amateur radio. That's not what it's meant to be at all. Getting started is meant to be, let me do it through an example. If you've got, let's say you've got a degree qualified software engineer who's been working in the electronics or software industry for the past 10 years, does he need to spend 12 weeks at a local radio club to pass a foundation exam? Probably not. There's probably a different route to amateur radio given his existing technical knowledge. Those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about when I talk about getting started. So if we find somebody who's very enthusiastic, we don't want the route to the exam system to be a barrier to him. We just want his technical knowledge to help him get to where he can get to quicker. So we have positive support and encouragement. That's all about our organisation and having the right volunteers in the right places to deliver our plans. We see that as being absolutely key to delivering the RSGB strategy. Reimagination, somebody wrote to me the other day and said, is that really a word? Well, I'm pretty sure it is. But reimagination is really about taking the hobby and looking at it in a different way and perhaps finding other people with more technical backgrounds elsewhere that might be interested in amateur radio. Young people, and then the mature audience segment. So those are the 7 strategic work streams that we've established. Each of those are being worked. We're developing objectives, we're developing strategy, we're developing specific tasks within those areas. Following the growth, I'm going backwards again. Sorry. So as I've mentioned, each work stream has a board member to champion, but recent examples within the work stream. So you've all had hopefully heard Steve at the beginning of at the opening to the convention mention about the recent ARIS contact. Absolutely fantastic bit of PR for amateur radio, including members of the royal family. That kind of thing I think is absolutely critical and a brilliant bit of advertising. So those are the kind of things that we want to keep doing. There are now 4 applications from schools in each of the 4 UK countries going forward for 2025 to do a similar kind of contact. So we're encouraging working with schools, trying to make sure that STEM activities are out there. British Science Week in 2025 is a very important thing. There's 4 activities that we've worked on as a collective team. Those 4 activities are created and are on the RSGB website. There's one involving a BBC Microbit, there's a small CW transmitter, there's various other different projects on there. We've shared the 4 activities with local schools and helping them get involved and primed in what might be coming in British Science Week. And 2 of the projects have been submitted to the British Science Week, and we're hoping that we'll have one selected, in which case that project will go out to every single school in the UK and will be amateur radio related. So we see that as a very important aspect. There's also National Coding Week, which I believe has now started. We've got some activities created that are also published on our RSG website. These were trialled in some schools and clubs and in the general community, and we've got some very positive feedback. And we've recently appointed a new Coding Week coordinator, so there's a lot of activity going on there. So YOTA Month is another good thing that we've been doing recently. So we've appointed, or rather we sent Rhys Williams, who I think is doing a talk here today, I believe. Is Rhys in the room here? No? Oh, he's just done it. Okay, great. But Rhys, while he was in Prague, submitted multiple reports, which all went up onto the RSGB website to keep things, keep us informed as to what he was doing and what the activities were. All very, very positive. We've also been targeting groups like U3A, which is the University of the Third Age, for those of you who don't know. We've put some inquiries out to the membership, and we found quite a reasonable overlap between members of the RSGB and member of U3A groups around the country. So we're looking at how we can take amateur radio into that kind of environment. There's also Probus and newly retired people and those kind of things. We're developing a training program using both online text materials and videos specifically to cover topics within the exam syllabus that people have been struggling with. So areas where we know a lot of candidates have found difficulties. We're trying to produce training aids and assistance for those people so that we can help them with the areas that are considered more difficult. And we're also in the process of developing a training app which will generate mock exams for people, and that'll be based on the actual live question bank. So that'll be a first for us. And that's, I believe, is now in beta testing, is my understanding of that app. And finally, I just wanted to share with you, we had a recent, what we called a senior leadership team meeting, which was very much focused on membership. I put my crazy hat on and spoke to some friends and other people in the amateur radio world and got them to describe to me their journey into the hobby. And I tried to find 4 very diverse and different individuals. And we then put together, working with Anna, we put together some personas that basically described their journey, their difficulties, and their perception of the RSGB, more importantly. Presented each of these personas to our leadership team and then got them really to think about what were the individuals' needs in their amateur radio journey. So how could the RSGB have helped them? What could membership do to meet their needs? And what were their challenges in that journey that we could help them with? So it was all really about looking at 4 real-life examples of people coming into the hobby, how they interacted with the RSGB. So some interacted with the RSGB in a great deal and got a lot of assistance from the RSGB. Some saw the RSGB as the gatekeeper and the exam and the key holder and just a barrier, really. So there's a lot of things to think about how we're perceived by people as they come into the hobby. And we've got a lot of output from that workshop that we held, or rather the senior leadership team meeting, which we're currently working, and that will form the basis of another workshop type activity that I would imagine would be happening early next year, where we'll be focusing on RSGB membership. And at the same time, I hope we'll have done some of the data mining that I talked about, so we'll have a better view on active radio amateurs versus membership of the RSGB. So that's just a flavour of some of the stuff that we've been doing around strategy. But the message that I'm trying to get to my colleagues and to other people within the organisation is that everything that we do within the RSGB should support our strategy. If it doesn't support our strategy, we shouldn't be doing it. So it's not that we're doing things that we, there's nothing new about what I'm presenting to you, really. That's the message. The message is it's just more organised. So what we're saying is these are our key goals. We're developing a means by how we can measure success or failure against those goals. And this is a beginning of a flavour of some of the activities that we've been doing to try and deliver against those goals. So I hope that gives you some information. Shall I pass back to you, Stuart?
You pass it to Andy.
Andy, sorry.
Super, thanks Mark and Stuart, much appreciated. So I'd now like to open the floor for questions, firstly on strategy. So while the strategy stuff from Mark is fresh in your mind, who'd like to start?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation on your strategy. All right, my name is David Crowe and my call sign is Golf 4 Mike Victor Uniform. I had a look at your company reports over the last few years. I found it interesting, first of all, when I look at it, in 2023 you quoted 21,500 members in the RSGB in the company report. Also, you reported that we only had 450 clubs, where if I go back to 2020, we had 500. So we've lost 50 clubs. As my experience this year as a district rep for Manchester, I do note that perhaps some clubs aren't really clubs because they've folded, but an individual might still hold the club call sign and pay the dues. So I think the figure is perhaps a bit lower if, in my little area, the same was around. Initially, you've got your 68 or 72 pounds, which is good for the RSGB. So my real question is, the RSGB has an input of about £1 million or just over. Has the RSGB benchmarked the company against any other organisations, considering, in my opinion, and I let the board answer this, we actually offer a public benefit to United Kingdom. And if they haven't, are they going to? Because I believe if they did look at similar organisations that perhaps interface with government departments and have a relationship with government departments like we do with Ofcom, there could be a different business model and a different company structure that could in fact cover that loss that, if I look at the accounts from 22 to 23, is increasing. All right, so I leave it to you to answer, and I might come back in a bit.
So I think, Chris, I need to pass this to you, if I may.
Yes. The point about the clubs we can't really answer because we don't know whether a club is active or not. We simply know whether they're paying their fees. And again, with call signs, you would never know whether somebody is active or not unless we get into the data mining we're talking about. In terms of the losses, the RSGB at the moment has far more cash than it actually needs for anything realistic. It doesn't have massive capital expenditure in the future that it's going to need. So it was a conscious decision to slow the rate of fee increase to allow us to return some of the value back to members. And we've been, and that is part of a plan. It's not any surprise to the board because the budgets have said that, and they see the budgets before the start of the year. So, the current budget cycle will be completed in December. So before we get into 2025, the board will know the shape of 2025 and beyond. And generally, we are very close to the budget. Our budgets tend to be conservative, so we actually tend to do better than our budgets. But, we're a small organisation, and trying to get more sophisticated just isn't going to work. In terms of benchmarking against other organisations, it's quite difficult because if you think of professional bodies, an awful lot of people are members because they have to by virtue of their job. I'm a chartered accountant. I couldn't do my job unless I paid my annual membership fees because it was a requirement of my job. And my annual membership fees for being a chartered accountant, even though I'm retired, I still pay them, are about 5 or 6 times the RSGB membership fee. So benchmarking against professional organisations that interact with the government, like an accounting body, isn't that helpful because an awful lot of people are members because they have to be, or because their firms pay for it, and in many cases their firms pay for it because it is a requirement of their job. So finding a similar organisation is extremely difficult because we're a hobby, not a profession. And if you look at professions and professional organisations, it's not a like for like comparison. So benchmarking against something else is not an easy there is not an easy comparison to make, because very few hobbies are regulated in the way that amateur radio is. You know, are regulated in the way that amateur radio is. So it's I'm not sure that there is going to be any easy benchmarking in there.
So I did some benchmarking against the British Model Flying Association, where I'm a member of I fly model aeroplanes. And at their AGM last year, I think they were predicting a 40% decline in the next 3 or 4 years. So in terms of other technical hobbies, we are doing brilliantly, and we should be proud that we're doing brilliantly.
Okay. Can I come back on that? Right. Last year.
Can I make a comment first?
Yes, please
I think from a commercial model, though, from a commercial costing model, I think some of the discussions that we have had that are very, very, very early, and you know, we haven't started discussions with external bodies on this kind of thing, but I think some of the services that we provide for Ofcom are certainly things that we could talk to them about commercial arrangements around. We haven't done so yet, but there are certainly activities that we undertake that perhaps there could be an alternative commercial arrangement for, definitely.
Okay.
Can we...
Can I just make
very
a
briefly.
quick couple of comments? Right. So I did write to the board last year and make a comment that there are other organisations that are like the RSGB. They might be a different business structure. For example, the British Beekeepers Association is totally voluntary. It interfaces with DEFRA. It has a receipt in the similar order of £1 million. It produces a magazine. It does exams, more exams than the RSGB to get qualifications. As I said, it's controlled by DEFRA. And as a member, I get £10 million of public liability and product liability, which I don't under the RSGB. And admittedly, the structure of how they receive their money is through the club, not directly.
Okay. Can we just wrap up, please?
No, please.
Well,
it's important.
Well, it is.
No. And can I ask the RSGB to look in the possibility to change the company structure? Because I asked the question, does it a public benefit, which I believe, because I believe if it converted to a CIO, which was available from 2012 for large companies with in excess of 1 million, that on the receipt of £1 million, if you had 80% of people, you could get £200,000 gift aid.
Right.
That makes the assumption that nobody's paying 40% tax.
We did do a study. Chris may or may want to add to this, but we had a qualified chartered accountant who used to be the treasurer take this study, take external advice, and concluded that it was not possible, that the public good was not enough. So we have looked within this year, and we have taken external professional expert advice, and the answer was unfortunately no. We are, of course, a learned society, which has other benefits.
Okay.
Super, thank you. I think we'll cut it at that point. Thank you. Over there, please. We get a microphone to you, please.
Hi, I'm Joe Chester, writer and NRC volunteer. I'd like to concentrate on the strategy question again. Let me put it this way. We're spending a lot of time talking to ourselves. What does the strategy actually say about marketing the idea of radio to people who don't know radio still exists? We see a lot of people coming in the door of the NRC and are amazed to discover that there are things called radios still.
Yeah.
We're doing absolutely nothing to persuade the general public that radio is still a thing and it's useful.
I completely agree with you. I spoke to a girl the other day.
Oh, thank you.
She
I
actually
can go now.
she actually works in Toolstation, and somebody was, for some reason, they were delivering something to my house, and there was a picture, and there was all these aerials on the top, and she kind of went, "What the hell is all that for?" You know? And I said, "Well, I'm just really interested in radio." And she said, "Radio? That's something you just get your smartphone to do. You just say play Radio 4 or play Radio 2, or what are you talking about?" And the penny really hit me then that she had no idea what radio was or how it worked or all of those things. And I think a lot of what I've touched on, the work that we're doing with U3A, with Probus, with all of these kind of things, and the STEM work, I think is doing exactly that. You're shaking your head and clearly you disagree with me.
We're doing nothing to convince the general public that radio is still a useful thing. Yeah, that it's a hobby, that you can get involved in it, you can play with the toys, or you can go contest. We're doing nothing to get to the general public. We're marketing to ourselves, to the convinced.
So what percentage would you say of people that come through the door of the NRC are of that view?
100%, except for the radio amateurs.
Heather, can you help with this?
Sure. For those who don't know me, I'm Heather. I'm the RSGB Communications Manager. I'm just about to do an interview on the live stream, and I literally just written down the statistic that I want to put out in relation to a different interview. In response to your comment, unfortunately, this is something that I hear a lot. Personally, I find it really depressing, but it's also a challenge to me as to how we can reverse this opinion. Because last year, in the mainstream media, not amateur radio media, the mainstream media, online, in print, in podcasts, on the radio, on the TV, there were 588 mentions of the RSGB and amateur radio. And our media monitoring agency, which does all the stats for us, so I know these are accurate, gave that a potential audience of all the people that had listened or read or watched of just under 1 billion. Not 1 million, not 100, not 1,000, 1 billion. So that's the number of people that we reached in 1 year through the mainstream media talking about amateur radio. Not something necessarily very niche. This included talking about what people were doing in their clubs, in their locality. It talked about STEM, it talked about ISS, all sorts of different aspects of amateur radio. So we can always do more. There's always more. If you employ a few more of me, please do. But that's not a bad number, is it? Potential audience of 1,588 mentions in 1 year. Now, thank you. So when people say, no, we're not doing anything, I have to say that's not true. We may not be doing as many different things as we could be doing. And one of the challenges that I would like to put out, and it applies to everybody in this room, whether you're an individual member or a club, what are you doing yourself to get amateur radio out to your local communities and in your local press? Because there's one amateur radio society, Furness, who have done a fantastic job this year. We get reports through our media monitoring agency, and it shows us all of the mentions, which is how we get it. Furness Amateur Radio Society gets something in pretty much every month in their local media, and we've contacted them and we said, how are you doing this? Because we want to put a case study together of what you're doing in order to help other clubs and individuals be able to do the same thing. And they've just built some relationships with their local media outlets. Some of their tips were to get in with the early reporters who were trying to make an impact, who were at the beginning of their career, because they're always looking for stories. And they share stories, and most importantly, they share photographs of people looking happy, looking interested, not looking bored, but looking like they're enjoying something, and then people want to read more about it. And as a result of their coverage, they said that they've had quite a number of people get in touch with them saying, I've seen this in my local paper, your club's name's in it, I'd like to find out more, can you tell me? And they're getting people coming along to their club nights for the first time as a result of their amateur radio media coverage. So that is the challenge that I would give to everybody. The RSGB can do a lot, but we can't do everything, and it relies on each person, each club, to share what they're doing with their local media, with their friends, with their family, with their colleagues, and link what they're doing with whatever it might be, whether you're an RF engineer, whether you've got a child at STEM at school who's wondering whether they should go into their local STEM club, whatever it may be, you can talk about it, tell the stories, because the stories are what sell the amateur radio media. So 588 mentions, potential audience of just under 1 billion last year, That's what the RSGB did with a number of other clubs. What can you do next year?
Yeah, Nick's there. Sorry, but one to Don and then to there. Sorry, you're ahead of me.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Very quickly, first of all, I'd just like to say that from my perspective, this whole thing of the strategy work has advanced a lot, and that's very encouraging. I think the key thing now, as we all know, is to operationalise this and to turn it into some actual things that we do differently, and to have the investment funds available to do that. And in the current financial situation, that's something clearly the board will be thinking about. I just have one question, and that is, if I compare RSGB with a number of societies around the world, we see that a lot of societies are effectively now not of the substance that RSGB is. But I do wonder whether the modelling has been done to consider what if things don't turn around. What if financially we do not manage to pull the numbers round? What is Plan B? And what is Plan B, from my point of view, could involve looking at whether we should have a virtual organisation which doesn't have a physical headquarters. Because it seems to me there are a number of options there about how you completely reimagine the society as a different functioning organisation. So I just leave that thought with the board. Don't need a detailed reply, Stuart, but you're welcome to try.
Well, obviously, it does cross our minds, but we have a very substantial cash reserve, and I think we need to use that to keep the existing model or better working. We are one of the world's leading amateur radio societies. We've got money in the bank that we can use to invest to keep being one of the leading amateur radio societies, and I think I would rather get Plan A to work.
Thank you.
We do think about it. We do think about it.
We have actually put together, just as a general discussion, exactly what you're talking about. With we've had a look at, what's the worst case scenario. You're talking the likes of virtual type of thing. We have discussed it, but it's not part of our strategy because, as Stuart says, we want to try and improve Plan A. But there is a nebulous Plan B there, but we don't think we'll be going there.
Super. Thank you. Please.
Right. Hello. I'm Gerald Mack, M0CUS. I just want to refer back to what the lady said here. Now, I've been in business for 30 years. If I look around this room, there's about, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 people in here. I'm an electrical engineer. I've got an electrical engineering business. There we go. 70 people know about it. I'll walk out of here, but I might not ever speak to you again. But 70 people know. That's as much use as 1 billion people know about amateur radio. Doesn't mean nothing. You've actually got to go out there and get that customer. That's the most important thing in any business. You've got to get the customer. Now, you may have 1 billion people out there who've heard of us, so what? So my mum's heard of it, but my mum's not going to go on radio home. You've actually got to actively go out there, and same as I have to do with my business. Just because people know that I'm there doesn't mean they're going to use me. I would actually say, why are you going to use me? What is that? What's in it? What's special about my business? Why do you want to come to me? What's interesting about my business? And I don't see that from the RSGB. I just see a load of, and please forgive me for saying this, but I see a load of retired people who sit back and say, oh no, with the RSGB, it'll be okay. And I don't see much happening.
Well, you might not be in one of the groups that they are outreaching to. One of the things that the regional team has been tasked and is doing in some of the areas is look at outreaching to non-amateur radio activities, the maker fairs, the men's sheds, the Women Institute, you name it, these type of things, to try and raise the profile of amateur radio. This is something we're doing at the moment. It's something we're looking at trying to improve, the way that we produce an Outlook team to go and speak to people in particular areas, to not preach the word to the existing radio amateur, but those, as you described, that never heard of amateur radio, maybe looking for a hobby because they're empty nesters or they've retired, etc. So we do that at the moment, but we could do it better, and that's one of the things that the regional team is working on.
Well, let me give just one very quick example of this. I came out of the Royal Navy in the 90s, and I joined a reserve base. Now, when I joined a reserve base, they predominantly, you can't learn to sail a ship in Birmingham, you know, so predominantly most of what they do is communications. And most of the CA bases around the country teach communications. Now, not long after I started, they get talking to people on a radio ham, this, that and the other. And I'm dealing with a bunch of people who are, you could say weekend warriors really. They want to get involved in, and they turn up at their Royal Naval Reserve Base. When I started explaining amateur radio, loads of them were interested. In fact, in my short time there, I'd say 30 people. 30 people out of this small base, HMS Mercer in Coventry, 30 people got licensed. Now, I have no idea how many reserve bases there is between the TA, the RAF, the Royal Navy, Marines. There's probably hundreds of them across the UK. Simple letter. We'd like to come and do a display of amateur radio, because a lot of these people really don't know that it exists.
So I first of all, I'd like to say I'm not retired yet. That's quite important. And I'm absolutely not sitting back and going, it'll be okay. I don't think that's true at all. I think we're trying very hard to take amateur radio growth of the hobby out to new audiences. The kind of statistics that Heather mentions, as I'm sure you know within marketing, the way that I know within business marketing, if 1 billion people hear about amateur radio, maybe 1,000 might think about it for a second time, and maybe 100 might ring somebody up and wonder what it is. So that's just the very first step in providing a route into the hobby for people with a genuine technical interest. What we can't do is convert the man on the street to become a radio amateur if he has no genuine interest in the technical side of things, or in radio communication, or in electronics, or in computing, or in any of the activities that we're involved in. But I believe we are working very hard to provide a path into the hobby for people with a genuine spark of interest that will connect to what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're sort of about halfway through the Q&A, so let's open it up to not just strategy, but more broadly. I'm quite happy to take some strategy as well. Let's go there and then to you, sir.
Just get this off my chest, that I was introduced to amateur radio in 1960 when I was 11 by my science teacher, G3ABG, who started the Work to All Britain set up some years after I left school, 1969. But I've been a member of the Society for now continually 40 years. There was a 12-year gap where I wasn't active within the hobby, but during my teens I was a member, so I would be clocking up 60 years about now, or I would have clocked up 60 years. I'm 75. Now, when I first came to the convention 40 years ago, Don Hillary, Don Field, so we were all in our early 30s, I guess, and now we're 40 years older. And going back to when my two sons, one's 29, the other's 31, Sam passed his foundation when he was 10, thanks to Kathy and Dave. Jack then decided he would do his. His licence is actually dated on his 14th birthday. Sam did a bit of operating for the first couple of months, then lost interest. Jack has never been on the air. So I did my bit 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They've shown no interest. Now, I'm very active on HF, mainly from a mobile setup, with 1,000 contacts this year and topside of 160 countries. They show no interest at all because they want to get on the PlayStations and the Xboxes, and they've got a mobile phone. So why try and contact some person in Japan that will never speak to again?
So can I paraphrase your question? Is your question, how do we make this relevant to modern
Well,
youth?
you can get to the schools. I volunteer at Chester Zoo, and there's 150,000 members that pay annually to the zoo. They get, it's the number one pay to visit attraction outside London, next to the Tower of London. But getting the younger people into the zoo, they're doing outreach in schools continually, and they've got a team of education rangers. But when do the RSGB actually do the outreach into the schools
Got you. That's the question. Can I pass that to?
Yes. We are doing a lot of that. The STEM stuff that Heather was talking about. I mean, there's an awful lot of work going on in schools at the moment. For instance, if you want to get people interested, you want to run some sort of an event. I mean, the event we ran last week was absolutely spectacular, where we had hundreds of guides and brownies at that ISS contact, girls who had no interest whatsoever in radio, none. In fact, one of their mothers came to me afterwards and said, my girl said they didn't want to come to this because it was a boys' thing, it was a tacky thing. And now, after that event where they heard the space station coming up over and had the contact with the astronaut, they were absolutely gobsmacked by it and really couldn't wait to do something, go upstairs and take part in the STEM experiments that we had upstairs that various people had devised. Neil Morse keys, sending your name on Morse, a demonstration of a CubeSat, all sorts of things upstairs, and the girls really played with that all afternoon and went away having had a taste of amateur radio. I know that's going on in that particular event, but I mean there's stuff going on in schools all the time. Have you heard there was a presentation this morning that was saying that our two new youth coordinators, Chris and Reese, were talking about what they're doing in schools and what's going on, for instance, up in Scotland and Wick High School, and what's going on in the universities. They're doing a lot of work there too, and that's the place to get people interested. Get them in young, even though they mightn't take it up immediately. Sow the seeds, and the work is done. A few years later, they'll come back.
I think the entries. We're hopeful, and we don't know yet, but if we do get a project selected in British Science Week, that'll be an amateur radio related project going to every single school in the country, and that's taken a lot of effort to get to.
Okay, thank you.
How many of the teachers are actually becoming radio amateurs, because those children will have moved
Okay.
on, but it's the teachers that are going to still be there, and I think it's the teachers more than the kids talking to the space station.
All right, thank you. Let me I'll just repeat that for the message. Essentially, your message is the teachers ought to be becoming radio amateurs as well, because they'll be present in the community for a long while. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm going to move us on to Tim, please.
My name's Tim Beaumont, M0URX. I may be wrong in this, perhaps you could put me right, but I understand that Richard Constantine from the RSGB Euro is resigning in 6 months, retiring. What is the strategy going forward? Will the job be tendered out to other people? Will it be brought back into the RSGB HQ? I wonder if you could elaborate on what the future is for the Bureau, please.
Thank you. Well, it would not surprise you that we've been having discussions with Richard. Richard, I understand, is going to write a job spec, and then we're going to look at the job spec and see how we can satisfy that within a sensible financial budget. Okay? Well, it'll kind of be up to whoever takes the job on to figure out how to modernise it. And modernising it may be making it more of a voluntary organisation than it is at the moment. It may be continuing it being professional. But Richard's going to write a job spec. There's a lot about running that QSL Bureau that people do not understand. The other thing that we need to worry about is there is a decline in the number of QSL cards sent, right? So almost nothing from Africa. I think 4 kilograms from Canada is one of the stats that we've got. So we've got to deal with a declining market, but still keep enough of it working to satisfy the DX community that want paper. Although I suspect most serious DXers, it's $10 in an envelope these days, isn't it?
Just to add, we are talking to other societies because they're in exactly the same position as us. Not necessarily with somebody resigning, but QSLs are declining, and what do we do in the future?
Germans.
Sorry?
Except the Germans.
They still have their troubles.
Super, thank you. Apologies for my brutal no favours. But if you'd like to ask the question now, please. You're on mute. You're on mute again.
So when you showed the license numbers, you had about 1,700 passing the foundation and only 300, I think, actually progressing onto the intermediate. Is it? It's all very well getting people in the door, but if we lose them and they go out the door as fast as they come in, then the net result is we get nowhere. Is there any sort of focus on, once we've got them through the door, got them through their M7, keeping them there?
So I think we need to distinguish between keeping people interested in amateur radio and progressing. There are some people who do not want to progress. They are first-class citizens, in my view. Just because someone doesn't take a full license, it doesn't matter. If they enjoy amateur radio, that is what is important. And I really detest the way that some people will not speak to people with foundation licenses. That is completely unconscionable. All right? So all licensees are important. So what we now need to do is to keep people interested in amateur radio. And we have, for example, the Beyond Exam scheme aimed at trying to show people new aspects of amateur radio to keep their interest burning. And we are developing those techniques. And in fact, Nathan may wish to say something.
Yeah, Beyond Exams has actually been working hard in the past couple of months to progress things further. Currently, obviously, we have Britworks and we have Discovery. We are looking to launch more schemes further on that would be tailored to people who've been in amateur radio longer to keep them interested. And we are looking at changing from a PDF model to something that's digitization for the modern era. So for the people in the next 5 to 10 years, we're not looking at necessarily this year, we're looking further afield, and we're also looking maybe to develop more other courses and information and stuff that people can use to keep people interested. So we're looking at all aspects. The Beyond Exams team actually meet every single week. This is only one of the off weeks because I'm away. So we are definitely looking at, and we're working really hard to get as much as we can out of that sort of stuff.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. John, please.
Hi, John Warburton, G4IRN. There's been mention several times of the successful STEM event last weekend, which I think was the International Space Station event, and Princess Catherine was there. Is that correct?
Duchess of Edinburgh.
Duchess of Edinburgh. Okay, Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie. Okay, so it just prompted me to think: has any thought been given to the royal patronage since Prince Philip passed away, and the benefits that it might bring?
Yes, we're still working on that. At the moment, the royal family have reduced considerably the number of patronages that they have, but we're certainly working on it. That's part of the plan going forward, yes.
Over in...
Thank you.
Complete change of topic. Gentlemen, you're all men. What are we doing about the other 50% of the population that are holding up the sky with us? For example, why isn't there 50-50 representation on the board for the other half of the population?
The board will be delighted if it became more diverse. But the problem we have is that it requires people to stand for the board and to get elected. And if people do not stand for the board, the diversity of the board is not likely to change that much. We have some scope to co-opt people, but finding the people to co-opt who have the skills to serve as a director is not easy. And that's why we've not made the progress that we would want to make.
Just on that question, Steve, I did have a brief discussion with you before about this. So, and I mentioned about the planning for the AGM 2025 and whatnot. The board need to look at the bylaws, because in the bylaws it states, and this has annoyed me for a couple of years, to become a board director, which is a top level post in a company that is registered with Companies House, etc., comes with responsibilities. You need to be a corporate member for 1 year, which is fine. And we do know how difficult it is to get board members at times. And to answer that man's question over there, I quite often get asked why the board are all old men. Unfortunately, it suits retired people with experience in business and whatnot. I had a friend who once became a board member. She was young, enthusiastic, very keen, and I said there, do you realise what is expected of you in the role of a director of a company? Oh, aye. Her job changed after she joined the board and she could no longer stay on the board. So she was a young, female, it doesn't suit working people. Sorry, Mark, but it doesn't necessarily suit working people of a young age and females who may have families and whatnot. It just doesn't work. I've often been said to me, why don't you join the board? Because I know what is involved in the board. But so to get back to my point, the bylaws state you need to be a corporate member for 1 year to become a director of the company, and that's fine, and you have to co-opt people and whatnot. Also in the bylaws, to become a regional representative, which is not wanting to degrade the post, it's a volunteer post within the society, but at a lower level. You're not a director, you don't have to sign up a company's house and whatnot. You are required to be a corporate member for 2 years. That doesn't sit right with me. That is not right. Shouldn't be. It should equally be one, or it should be more for a higher post. Thank you.
Yeah, Philip, we spoke about this earlier on, and I've told you that in conjunction with Tony, who's the board liaison member responsible for the regional team, we'll take this back to board and we'll ask the board what it wishes to do.
We have occasionally signed off. We have occasionally, as the board, signed off exceptional cases where people don't qualify for that.
I know that, and we have for less than a year, but a lower...
That's fine. I think...
should require a higher requirement.
I think we have the message. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just trying to move us on. We've got time for one more at the back there. Check shirt, please. You might get more than one if you can be brief. Just consider myself any questions.
Just a quick comment, just regarding getting more women involved. I think if we did more in public service, as opposed to just offshoring it out to Rainet, that might be a bit better. Might get a few more females involved, I think. Just a question. I mean, the thing you've haven't really mentioned is how do the clubs help? I mean, all this UAE, U3A and all this sort of stuff, liaison, I don't hear about this, and we're one of the active clubs. We just seem to be airbrushed out of all this strategy thing. Bit brutal, sorry about
Who'd
that.
like that? Anyone?
Not sure what the question is, really.
Well, I think if I paraphrase the question, I think you're an active club and you feel you're not linked into the strategy, you're not getting the feed, you don't know how you can contribute into that.
Well, and I think from an organisational perspective, I think there's a lot to be thought about and a lot to look at and a lot of things that we need to think about. But from a regional club perspective, the flow down of what the RSGB is up to should come through the regional team to you. And if that's not happening, then we need to look at that. Because that should be your link between your local club and the RSGB. That should be what the regional team is doing for you.
So you can write to our director. Super, just try and push on one more at the back.
Hi, John, M0IDA. It's been about 10 years since I looked at the RSGB, looked at getting a full licence. It was a long and hard path at the time, but in the end I was licensed to full in 1 day, and that is testament to the people that bring innovation like the Bath Distance Learning Group. I've been very pleased to see similar progress, particularly induced by the pandemic in terms of licensing and bringing forward the ease of becoming licensed and the ease of becoming a participant in this great and fun hobby. And kind of following on from the last question as well, I just want to offer a word of encouragement amongst all the negativity that I've seen over the years. I believe you're moving in the right direction. I would encourage you to move faster and to adopt more and more modern methods despite the naysayers.
Super. Well, I think with that, I think we are done. Thank you very much for all your contribution, folks. I thought that was amazing. I thought 1 billion people outreached in a year was absolutely amazing as well. But thank you, really positive session, and off to your lunch.